what we're going to go over is kettlebells because, I have spoken about training with kettlebells forever on the podcast, but I've never done an in-depth, also like visual whiteboard type of thing. And the way I want to get into this is one of the reasons why I use kettlebells a lot in my own training and with my clients. And I think it just comes down to how the kettlebell almost becomes, part of you. So if you think about my little drawing here, my little 32 kilo kettlebell, the way it's designed is just an extension of you. So if I am holding it with my hand and the bell is here, now my lever length is now longer, right? And I think this is why, one of the reasons why, there's, in my opinion, two reasons, why kettlebell training is so much more, I'd say, significant when it comes to a training effect is because the fact that it is extending your lever length. And we all know that in exercise, like if I do a push-up off my knees, it's a lot easier than doing push-ups off my feet. And that's because I cut the lever in half and I have now less, I wouldn't say resistance, but less to push off from, right? So with the kettlebell, if you think of doing a swing in front of you, it's now elongating what your arms would be, right? And this is why dumbbells don't really work that well for swings. I mean, yeah, you can use them, but the way it's designed, it doesn't give you that same effect. And anytime you elongate the lever, it's going to make the exercise harder. So yeah, I could do a double-handed dumbbell swing. Sure, I'll get, my heart rate up, getting my glutes fired, core, whatever it is, but it's not going to make it that much harder. And, I'll kind of hit a ceiling effect with that, even if I go heavier. Whereas with a kettlebell, for the most part, if I was swinging a 24 kilo kettlebell, the average person is going to find that challenging compared to a dumbbell that's 24 kilos is close to 55 pounds, a 55-pound dumbbell, right? So that's the first thing, is that elongates the lever. So in this case, if you're doing swings, your arms, right? Number two, it's a variable object. So when you look at the design of a kettlebell, the fact that the handle tends to be a lot smaller than the actual weighted part, right? It's like almost like an offset weight. So when you look at how a dumbbell is designed, a lot of times it is, the weight, say if it's 30 pounds of a dumbbell, is evenly distributed within that shape of the dumbbell. Whereas a kettlebell, the weight is not distributed evenly, right? There's a little bit of weight in the handle to support the rest of the kettlebell so it doesn't fly off and break off. So when it comes to that kind of logic, it almost resembles what we do every single day. So like that grocery bag or your backpack that you pick up, it's not evenly, weight, like the weight within that bag or grocery bag that you're holding, the weight is not evenly distributed. It's kind of all over the place. So you have to stabilize a little bit more, work a little bit more in order to, lift it up or put it into your trunk, whatever it is. And I think the kettlebell is kind of the same way. It just requires you to stabilize a little bit more, which is going to bring me into my next point. That being said, if kettlebells are required for you to stabilize more, it is going to require more muscle activation, meaning more muscle contractions, meaning more energy output, meaning more calories burned, meaning your weight loss, fat loss goals are going to come a little bit quicker. You're going to be in a calorie deficit compared a little bit easier compared to just using dumbbells, and not only from a fat loss perspective, but from a cardiovascular perspective as well. And the other thing that I look at is because you have to stabilize a lot more, we kind of go back to what I was saying before when we were talking about the joint by joint approach, joint centration. So when I think of stability, I think of safety. So if I'm holding a kettlebell and I know it's X amount of weight and I need to make sure everything's kind of like in a stable position, if I'm holding it, I want my shoulder to be in a joint centered position. So it promotes, from like a rehab standpoint, a lot of good things, and that's why I tend to use kettlebells a lot in a rehab setting. So the benefits are just like, so now that we know what the difference between a kettlebell and a dumbbell is when it comes to benefits, and I'm not bashing dumbbells, like time and place, it's just if I'm looking for a certain goal to achieve, I'm definitely, for the most part, I'm going to use kettlebells in some shape or form, and I'm going to get into those things of like what I use it for, to get there a little bit faster. Kettlebells got introduced into the Western Hemisphere by a guy named Pavel, probably around the 90s, but I didn't really kind of get steam rolling until the early 2000s. And the whole kind of training system came from the Russian army. And when you think about Russians at their prime of the Olympics back, I think in the 70s, they tended to dominate the Olympics quite a bit based on this model of training that I honestly now can't remember, but essentially their work capacity was so high, and one of the tools that they use were kettlebells, but they had this mindset that, say you're cutting freaking wood outside and you're starting to get tired, your rest wouldn't be, I'm going to just stop doing this for a while and then go back to it. It would be, let's find another physical activity that's different as my rest. So you go from chopping wood to digging a hole to putting the wood away, whatever it is. And kettlebell training is kind of the same thing. Is like, it's not, this is a whole other conversation, is how to program kettlebell training, but say as you fatigue doing swings, you can put down the bell. You can use either a lighter bell or the same bell to do a different exercise that requires a little bit of variance. So say I'm swinging, I can put it down, and now I'm going to go into squats, going from a more hip dominant exercise to a more quad dominant exercise. So I'm still working to build my capacity up, but I'm just utilizing a different exercise. And I think that's where kettlebells are so brilliant in that kind of aspect. So the Turkish Getup, I don't know why it's called the Turkish Getup, but just the Getup in general, when I saw this idea, this was one of the reasons why I got into movement so much, is that seeing an individual lying on their back, kind of going across body almost into like a rolling pattern, and keep in mind they're holding a pretty heavy weight, and then from there going into a half kneel position and then standing, coming back down, and it just looked like this beautiful thing. And I was like, holy shit, like what the hell is this? And like that's where I kind of went into the rabbit hole of kettlebell training. And the Turkish Getup in general, like it just mimics what kind of like those developmental stages as a child goes through. And this is where I think Gray decided to kind of dig deeper into the kettlebell world, because the whole functional movement screen is based on the developmental stages of a child growing up. And when I started writing my first Ironclad body book, I went through all the benefits of the Turkish Getup, and now rewriting and updating my book for the second volume, which, by the way, I'm at like 64,000 words, crazy in depth. I actually have the list in front of me here for the Getup, because understanding all the benefits will, one, influence how you're going to train. And I kind of look at the kettlebell world is kind of like missing links into your programming, because like if you're a big meathead and like lifting heavy, kettlebells is those like missing blocks in your training program that you need to add in order to do those big lifts. So what I have written down here is literally 12 things. So the first one promotes cross-lateralization, and essentially what that means is in that position lying down. So I'm lying down, the right hand holding kettlebell, left hand out to the side, and I cross my midline. It's essentially getting my like right brain to work alongside with my left brain. So there's a lot of like neurodevelopmental patterns of just lying on your back and learning how to roll over, which is what kids do when they learn how to develop. That rolling pattern is teaching your body that cross-reciprocal patterning in order for you to eventually walk. And when I teach the get up, the biggest thing that I see is people not able to roll over. Like, it almost becomes so surprising to me that, you know, people are like, oh yeah, I want to go to the gym and I want to lift heavy, I want to do the bench press, and then I get them on the ground. I'm like, all right, we're going to learn how to do the first phase of the get up. And, you know, they get into the position and then like their leg pops up, they can't roll over, they're like, what the hell is going on? And honestly, it's like, if you can't roll over, then there's a lot of missing links when it comes to your training. And I've had like strong dudes, and I put this in air quotes, try the get up, just like the first phase. In the first phase, there's two kind of ways to it. You can either end on the elbow or you can end onto the hand. So imagine yourself lying on your back, right hand up in the air, right leg bent, left leg straight out, hand straight out. The moment I take that deep breath in and come across the body onto the elbow, keeping my chest up, that could be considered phase one. Some people in the kettlebell world community will consider going up towards the hand as phase one. So really it's up to your discretion of where you want to go. But that's initially one of the hardest things for people to learn. So when I see people not able to do that, it's like, holy crap, we need to work on a lot of core stability and a lot of sequencing when it comes to movement. And literally when I get people good at this, it just clears up so much stuff. And also like just becoming athletic, just being able to function and move like a human being. So moving on, it also promotes upper body stability and lower body stability. So when you think about those two, what I just said, both upper and lower body stability, what that means is that if I am coming into phase one, the fact that I'm holding a weight, and actually, you know what? In phase one, I actually get people to just hold a fist, like, and have no weight, and people still have trouble with that. And I'm like, to be considered strong, and this is one of the things with the Turkish Getup, for men, they should be able to do the Getup with a 24 kilo. The only time it goes down to the 20 kilo is if, I think you need to be under 140 pounds. So if you're under 140 pounds, you're doing the 20 kilo. I didn't go down that path, but women need to use the 16 kilo. And same thing, there's also a weight class that's under, and I think it's like, if you're 120 or under, that's when you get to use the 12 kilo. So imagine this, these are the strength standards in the kettlebell world, both in the Dragon Door community and Strong First. And I have some people that literally can't roll over in phase one without any weight. So I'm like, imagine if I could get this person, a dude, with a 24 kilo rolling over onto the elbow, into the hand, like it's nobody's business. Like, that is some powerful stuff. Now, because I'm holding that kettlebell the entire get up, and like we haven't even gone through the other phases, holding that kettlebell the entire get up needs some sort of upper body stability. The moment you get into the half kneeling position, and that's where I would consider that phase 2, that's where you need that lower body stability, right? This one exercise allows you to work both upper and lower stability. So when it comes from like a rehab's perspective, can't talk, that is super important. So if I know I have limited time with a patient or person, client, whatever it is, and the one thing I can teach them, because a lot of times people don't know how to activate their core, they don't know how to breathe, they don't know how to relax, contract, things like that. So phase 1, in order to cross the body effectively, you need to know how to utilize your diaphragm. So it's like, as I'm teaching someone how to breathe, I'm also going to teach them how to do the Turkish Getup. Huge dividends down the road. Now that patient, client, whatever it is really, really good at that, and now I'm giving them a kettlebell to practice with it, now I'm working shoulder stability. A lot of people have shitty shoulders, and one of the issues is that it needs stability in order to do that. So it's like, awesome, now I'm building stability at the same time. Also at the same time, even in phase 1, we're creating some sort of component of strength, because eventually, and like, there's so many avenues that I can go with this, because sometimes I'll never go past phase 2 just because sometimes people have shoulder mobility issues, which we'll also get into later on. But strength component, sometimes I'll just get my male clients that are big dudes that don't have really good shoulders and just do phase 1 with a really, really heavy weight. Now, another thing, again, going back to my first point from the very beginning of me talking, yes, you could use a dumbbell, but the nature of how the kettlebell is designed, I find that because when you're holding it, you have the big ball here, that's a lot more challenging to stabilize than just a dumbbell here.